sources told us over the weekend, and we double confirmed today, that it looks like Michigan and Penn State are the loudest dissenters when it comes to the NBC portion of the Big Ten TV deal. And if you are unaware of what is happening, let us fill you in right here on the Monty Show with the Big Ten TV debacle. Now, listen, the first thing I want to say is, by all accounts and by all the sources we spoke to over the last 2 days, this deal's getting done one way or another. There is nobody in the Big Ten that's going to walk away from potentially a $100 million payday over kickoff times. I have been told that's not going to happen. But Michigan and Penn State are adamant that they will not sign a deal that has them kicking off after 6, 7, or 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is prime time on the West Coast. They simply will not do that. And when you look at the history of the Big Ten, and certainly in recent history, you see a lot of their bigger games, including Michigan, Ohio State, that are noontime kickoffs. And I totally understand that. They want those November games to be earlier in the day. They don't like playing in cold weather football. They claim there is a mental health component, a physical well-being component for the players. Hey, I totally understand that. But at some point, if you are going to move into this role and you are going to fulfill this role as the biggest, baddest TV contract in the country, you are going to have your biggest brands. And in the Big Ten, that is certainly Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. You are going to have your biggest brands playing in primetime at some point. And when you have a TV situation like this, and NBC, who is a big part of this, because remember, this TV deal has NBC with an exclusive window, the late kickoff in TV land, to get into that Pac-12 after dark window. Michigan and Penn State, and by some accounts Ohio State, are saying we're not going to play those games. We are not going to play late night games on Saturdays in November. And listen, I understand it, but it doesn't seem feasible. The other part of this that doesn't seem feasible at all is that Kevin Warren, the former commissioner of the Big Ten, handed NBC a championship game for the Big Ten in 2026 without the permission to do so, put it in a contract, and now is having trouble getting that done because Fox is like, hey, that's all well and good. You can give us our money back because the deal's not dry. Nobody signed this deal, and it has left the Big Ten incredibly vulnerable in a lot of situations. And if you look at the reporting that's out there, like Pete Thamel today tweeted this graphic out where he talked about the fact that you have a $40 million paycheck going back to Fox because, according to sources, Kevin Warren gave that championship game to NBC. The Big Ten Network, you will remember, is actually the one that controls the rights to the inventory in this deal. And who owns the Big Ten Network? That'd be Fox Sports. Mm-hmm. And it is remarkable that Kevin Warren either made a mistake or acted out of his level here. He didn't stay in his lane. You look at this bottom one, there's tens of millions of dollars of value in NBC's primetime deal in flux, as Petitti, the new commissioner of the Big Ten, has been racing to ensure it keeps as much of it as original value as possible. Holy cow, this is a big deal. And Jake, I don't think there's any easy way to fix this. It is going to require, and remember, in a league where there's only 3 teams, it is Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, and then everybody else at this point. In a league with only 3 teams, there's going to be some folks who are either going to take far less money, or those 3 teams, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, are going to have to bend the knee and play late November games, and I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, well, and it surprises me a little bit, like when I think about exposure, and you think about the college football playoff, and you think about all the great things that come from playing in the primetime slot on the West Coast. Like, I do think that there is a lot of opportunity. Now, I'm certainly not saying that Michigan or Penn State or even Ohio State should have a big tolerance for doing that on a regular basis. But you can't be in a place where you're saying, hey, we're never going to play these games. I mean, you got to be willing to play the West Coast late window game at least once or twice a season. And I just don't see anything wrong with it. I don't see anything wrong with Michigan getting their ass on a plane and flying out to SC. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't understand it. I don't understand why you're not willing to go out there. You want to sit here and talk about, mental health, and you want to sit here and talk about how it's so difficult. Then why is SC and UCLA coming into your conference?
Yeah.
Right? Why? Why did you sign off on that? Why was that okay? Well, because if they're flying, you don't care about mental health, but if you're flying, it's a problem. So I see a double standard at play there, but I also think, this Kevin Warren situation is a real problem. There's no getting around it that he offers NBC, a championship game that was supposed to go to Fox, and you have all these conflicting and crossing wires of communication, and I think that's what Tony Petitti has been tasked with to come in and basically clean up. And again, I say, hey, right out the gate, when you're joining the conference that's making the most money in the land, more money, more problems. And now you precisely have more problems because you're trying to put together this juggernaut or this behemoth of a TV deal. So I kind of get it, but at the same time, it's a problem. Like, if these schools would just get in line and say, yeah, you know what, we understand, we do need to go to LA, or we do need to do these certain things. Like, we get it. We'll figure it out. This deal would be done very quickly. But if these three schools are going to be stubborn, I'm not sure what that path looks like yet.
Well, I also think this situation at USC is a huge problem. And I don't know how many people saw this. I'm sure you must have seen it by now. Mike Bohn, the athletic director at USC, was fired, essentially according to massive amounts of reporting out of Los Angeles, for inappropriate behavior around female employees at USC. He made inappropriate remarks about clothing and hair and weight from the athletic director, and I would remind you, who resurrected athletics at USC. Mike Bohn was a massive hire when he got to SC. He brought in Lincoln Riley. He essentially helped push through the move to the Big Ten. Everything that you have at SC in the last several years is because of Mike Bohn.
Yeah.
And now you're moving to the Big Ten a year from right now, and now you have a massive sex scandal on your hands, essentially, or workplace harassment. We'll get more details as this comes out. Mm-hmm. But this is not a good look for USC. This is not a good look for the Pac-12. This is not a good look for the Big Ten. When a high-profile athletic director had to mutually resign because he wants to value his family and he has lingering medical issues. And then 2 hours later, I believe it was, the LA Times came out with the news that, Mike Bohn had inappropriate, atmosphere, inappropriate comments, inappropriate behavior and language around female athletic department employees who reported it, who said they were uncomfortable, and SC fired him for it, according to reports. This was not a good 5-day period for the Big Ten. And there's just no way to look at this. But hear me clearly on this Big Ten TV deal. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. And you are going to have to shuffle money around now because each one of these programs, if this deal is signed, and I think it's going to be signed, if this deal is signed, at a minimum, you're going to have athletic programs that are cutting a rebate or taking less money for several years from Fox, or you're going to pay less money if you're NBC because now you're not getting a Big Ten TV deal. Like, somebody's going to have to give up money, and you know who that's going to be? That's going to be Oregon and Washington. That's who's going to pay, I think, the majority of this money, and who's going to suffer the financial repercussions, because it's not going to be Ohio State. It's not going to be Michigan, and it's not going to be Joe Paterno's, kid, damaging atmosphere that he created in Happy Valley where Penn State shouldn't even be playing college football anymore. Yeah. No, it's not going to be those Penn State Nittany Lions. It's going to be Oregon, and it's going to be Washington. And I think this goes to show you several things. One, the news has not improved over the weekend on the Pac-12 TV deal. This report that will kick off as the Pac-12 burns. Because remember, you guys as a viewership demanded a name change from as the Pac-12 turns to as the Pac-12 burns.
Right.
A lot of people have asked, well, hey, what's going on over the weekend? And this story that is continuing to circulate, and Andrew Marchand had it, and a bunch of people had it, and yeah, we've had it for 6 months. We have had it for 6 months that ESPN and the Pac-12 are really nowhere. They're not closer together. They're not further apart. Mm-hmm. Nothing has changed for ESPN and the Pac-12. And as simply as I can state it, you can say that ESPN's out on Tier 1 rights. You might be right. You can say that ESPN only wants, Tier 2 and Tier 3. You might be right. But here's what I know from people in the industry who have told me since beyond the first of the year, back in late December, ESPN's offer for the Pac-12 has not changed. Not one time. $90 million for 5 years.
Yeah.
Period. That's it. $90 million a year for 5 years. You want to give us your Tier 1 games? Great, we'll take them. Our appetite would be for 2 games a week, 1 for digital, 1 for TV. Done. You want to make that your best game? Great. We're not taking your worst game. Because remember when this TV deal kicks in. This deal kicks in a year from now when SC and UCLA are out of the conference.
Yeah.
So while you may have 5 games a year, every year going forward, you're not going to have SC and UCLA. So instead of 6 that you have this year, you're going to have 5 next year, right? And that is, by the way, if you don't expand. And at this point, it's looking less and less likely that the Pac-12 is going to expand before a year from now. Very less likely. So let's surmise they don't expand and they do a deal with ESPN. So you've got 5 games. And let's just surmise that nobody leaves the conference, which I think is highly unlikely. But let's surmise that nobody leaves the conference. Mm-hmm. Right now, what's the best game in that conference? Well, it's probably centered around Oregon, Washington, and Utah. Those 3 teams have to be involved because those by far are the 3 best football teams in this conference. Subtract USC and UCLA. So those 3 teams can't play each other every week. Oh, by the way, don't forget there's like a month of bye weeks.
Yeah.
So instead of 5 games a week, you're going to have 4. So if you're ESPN, are you paying for the worst game? Well, on a bye week, what happens if Oregon has a bye week? Because I would assume, and this is probably way, way, way reaching. I mean, a massive reach. I'm going to assume that you are not going to allow Oregon and Washington and Utah to have bye weeks on the same week. I'm just going to assume that. You're going to spread those bye weeks out, right? I mean, George, right? You would hope so. Because if I've got Arizona and Oregon State as my best game of the week, we don't have a best game of the week. We don't have a Tier 1 game that week. And that's the harsh reality of it. Because you don't have, if you're playing Arizona and Oregon State, you don't have big TV markets. You probably don't have top 25 teams. With all due respect to Oregon State, because I tell you every day on this show, I love what they're doing in Corvallis.
With all due respect.
But in the grand scheme of things, right? And who knows what's going on with Barnes, their athletic director, who had a massive health scare recently with his heart, and who knows what's going to happen at Oregon State. But I'm going to guess that Arizona versus Oregon State a year from now is not a top 25 game. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to guess. Can that be a Tier 1 game? Can Arizona State, 1 year from right now, and I know they have 79, QB1s on their roster. We get it, Drew Pine. You're amazing. Can Arizona State and Washington State be a top 25 game a year from now? Let me ask you this. Can Oregon and Colorado a year from now be a top 25 game? Probably not.
Yes.
No. And I know you're a huge Deion guy.
Hey, man.
They're projected by just about everybody to win not 4, not 3, not 2, 1 game this year.
I know. Everybody's on the 1 game train.
But no, seriously.
Yeah.
Their projection is to go 1-11 at Colorado this year. Is that a team that's a top 25 team a year from now? Come on. If we're being honest, And I know Shedeur Sanders is slice quarterbacks, and he's going to be amazing. That's not a top 25 team. So if you don't have Oregon, Washington, and Utah, you don't have a tier 1 game. So how are you going to work that out? How are you going to work that out? In this 10-team group in the Pac-12, how many top 25 matchups will there be during a given college football season?
Yeah, I guess I'll have to figure something out.
Oregon and Washington, that's one. Washington and Utah, that's 2. Oregon and Utah, that's 3. You're only in an entire season, maybe. Like the picture is dire. And let's just say you add who everybody says they're going to add, San Diego State and SMU. That doesn't get you more top 25 football matchups.
Agreed.
So you're in a hell of a spot. So the issue becomes not that ESPN is anybody telling you that ESPN is out on Pac-12 football does not have the pulse. They don't. Because without saying and stuff,
right,
we're pretty high up the food chain. And if you go back and look at our YouTube log,
yep,
we've been pretty spot on with this story. ESPN's not out on Pac-12 TV
and
rights.
I feel like a lot of people, what was it, Dodd, who said that a lot of people misquoted, was it Dennis Dodd,
yes.
I believe it was? Everyone was like, oh, Dennis Dodd said ESPN is out on Pac-12 altogether. No, dude, that was just the headline. That was the clickbait. That was you swallowing that hook so he could reel your ass in on the story, right? What did Dennis Dodd really say? He said, hey, they're out on tier 1. They're not going to pay you more money for tier 1, just like my guy here said.
And let's get it right. The Pac-12 is out on ESPN as a tier 1. Because if you said to ESPN, we'd really like you to take our tier 1 game. Okay, cool. Yeah, here's your $9 million check to start the contract. They're not changing that. If you want to give them tier 1, they're still going to give you $90 million a year.
Yeah.
You want to give them tier 2, they'll still give you $90 million a year. That's all they're interested in. And the other thing that a lot of people hit me on today, and we have reported deeply and widely on the CW, I have told you in the past, and the same thing I'm going to tell you today. We have talked to the top guys at the CW.
Mm-hmm.
The issue between the Pac-12 and the CW is live golf. That is to say, number one, if you're paying attention, what we reported 2 weeks ago, the CW lost massive amounts of major market CBS stations. So what does that mean? Well, it means they don't currently have an affiliation in San Francisco, which is the pulse of Pac-12 country. So let's say you do a deal with the CW. They're going to have to bring you an affiliate in San Francisco and one that has reach. Because, by the way, who they also lose? Pretty sure they lost Sacramento in that group as well. So you don't have Northern California. And I would also remind you, they don't have an O&O station in Arizona or Oregon. And what does that mean? O&O stands for owned and operated. What does that mean? Well, that means that they don't dictate the programming on those stations. They have affiliates, which is a TV station that takes the CW feed and puts it on their air. So they have affiliates, but affiliates do not have to take anything they don't want to take.
Yeah.
Right? So you say to them, hey, we have a deal with Live Golf. Need you to carry that tournament. They're like, okay, I'll carry it from noon to 2, but then I'm putting on, Full House reruns again.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we saw 2 weeks ago in Tulsa. When I'd remind you, what did the Tulsa CW affiliate do? They cut that tournament off halfway through the final round on Sunday and said, peace out. We're going to reruns of TJ Hooker. Most of you are too young for TJ Hooker. So that's one issue. That's one aspect of the relationship, is that the CW is not exactly robust in the heart of Pac-12 country, right? Okay, so that's one issue. Number two goes back to, again, the Live Golf deal. And you may not know this, and if you do, I'm not trying to mansplain it to you, but the CW does not give a paycheck to Live Golf. In fact, no money changes hands. So there's not like hey, we're buying rights to Live Golf. That is strictly a revenue share. Live Golf and the CW share the ad sales and they split it. That's the financial deal. The Pac-12 cannot do that. The CW and its parent company will have to cut a check to the Pac-12 every year. And now here's the toughest part. Early on in this TV process, and I want to say it was October, go back on the channel and check it out. We talked about the CW. And we told you, hey, here's the biggest issue with the CW.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the Pac-12 wants a national TV deal. The CW wants to put them on west of the Rockies, which is to say in Pac-12 country. They want to do a regional deal, much like the WNBA deal with Ion TV, which I thought was brilliant. The CW wants to say, okay, well, Utah football or Washington football. Okay, Washington football, we're going to have a Pac-12 doubleheader every Saturday afternoon into prime time. And the late game in Seattle is going to be the Washington Huskies. The late game in Los Angeles is going to be San Diego State. The late game in the Fresno is going to be Fresno State. You get my point. But you're going to take Oregon and Arizona as your early kickoff, and then your game, Washington versus Washington State, will be the primetime game.
Yeah.
That's the deal that the CW wanted to make. And the problem is, our sources told us, I'm pretty sure it was a $150 million offering. And that was it. Because you're the CW. Yes, you're part of a vast media company. But again, this is the CW. And remember what the edict at the CW is. We want to carry live sports, and college football is a priority. For $150 million. So if you go to the CW, and let's say you make the $150 deal, you're not going to have stream, number one. Number two, you're out. ESPN's out altogether because the CW is I would guess, is a non-starter for ESPN. And I'd also guess that ESPN's a non-starter for the CW. Now, that's just on your TV set. Mm-hmm. My guess is ESPN would pay you some small incremental income, cash, to put a Pac-12 game on ESPN+. That'd be my guess. I have heard that to a very lesser extent, that we'll take one game and put it on ESPN+, period. Nothing on TV, nothing on the .com, just on ESPN+. But does that get you to $20 million? That probably doesn't get you to $20 million. And by the way, what have our sources at multiple Pac-12 schools told us? If it's not $25 million, we're probably losing half the conference.
Better send those refunds.
$25 million. And if the CW truly is at $150 million, is this really a deal? Which comes back to the tipping point with the Pac-12 and the CW, in that the Pac-12 wants the CW to buy in on a national scale, which means if you are in Miami, Florida, you're going to get Pac-12 football, which means if you're in Dallas, Texas, you're getting Pac-12 football. Now ask yourself this, if you're in Norman, Oklahoma on the CW, do you give a rat's ass about Utah and Colorado playing a football game on the CW? Is that a game you're turning on?
No.
In Tuscaloosa, Alabama? And this is my point.
Yeah.
If you're the CW, that's not a deal you can do.
No.
Because your CW stations are not going to carry it. They're not going to carry it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those CW stations are in the heartland of America. And if it's not Bama, it's not nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not West Virginia, if it's not the Mountaineers, if it's not the Sooners, if it's not the Canes, if it's not the Gators, if it's not the Knowles, nobody in Tallahassee is watching Oregon State football.
That's the bottom line.
This is a very difficult deal to put together.
Yeah.
And I understand a lot of people think the CW is still in. I don't believe, and I've said this before, I don't believe that anybody has said, hey, we're never talking to you again, drop dead. The conversations are happening. The question is, are we just blowing smoke, or is there actually a tangible deal there? For the Pac-12, there is a tangible deal to be done at the CW. You remember this at 2:30 Pacific time, 5:30 Eastern on May 22nd. There are tangible deals on the table, and here's where they exist. They exist at the CW. They exist at ESPN. They no longer exist, in my opinion, from what sources have told me, and we've reported it on this show, they no longer exist at Amazon.
Yeah.
And I don't believe they any longer exist at NBC Universal. I think the only place you're getting a linear TV deal is the CW for $150 million west of the Rockies and ESPN at $90 million a year for 2 games. One's on digital, one's on the mothership. I think those are the legitimate TV deals that are out there from what we've heard.
Yeah.
And this brings me back to one other point, because I talk a lot. I totally get it. It is called The Monty Show.
Right.
Where are you going to get your stream from? Because for all of the ESPN's out.
Hey, you start talking shit.
Where are you going to get your stream from? How about ESPN Plus? I think now, and again, I could be wrong. I think now the only streaming partner available to the Pac-12 is ESPN Plus. And I think there's a lot of people who believe, well, if you don't get the linear, you're not get. There's a deal to be done with ESPN on ESPN Plus. Which, by the way, again, who told you here first?
Yeah.
ESPN is not worried about you watching on TV anymore. It's nice income for them. And what have we told you repeatedly about ESPN? All the people who are like, ESPN is dead.
Layoffs.
Hey, that's cool. They're all basing that on not nearly as many people are watching ESPN on television as they once did. But what they also don't want to tell you is that ESPN is making $430 million a quarter on ESPN Plus members.
Oh, what are you talking about, man?
I said $430 million a quarter.
Dude.
Just on ESPN Plus memberships. That is not, like, I thought Marchand in the New York Post made a great point. That's not even, like YouTube TV. Where do we watch ESPN every day?
YouTube TV.
We watch it on YouTube TV. So all of these people are like, ESPN's dead. Well, YouTube TV ain't getting ESPN for free.
Yeah.
Who do you think? Well, yeah, they're paying a carriage fee. So ESPN is far from dead. In fact, I would tell you, as I have been told by people in the TV industry, ESPN's an ATM machine for Disney.
Yeah.
And it's a very good part of what's going on at Disney.
So why do you think they're laying people off? And this is what the haters don't want to admit. They're only laying people off because they're trying to keep the profit funnel in a certain percentage so that they can feed the rest of the business. That's the only deal.
And where are they focusing all of their revenue? On creating value in their digital properties. So ESPN.com, ESPN Plus. Tonight, when you're chilling in the cut, open the ESPN app. Notice on the Lakers-Nuggets game, there's going to be a little gold button. It's just going to be like a little bubble. And it's going to say, watch live. You click that button, and if you're an ESPN Plus subscriber, it'll start playing right away. Yes! If you're not, you'll have to log into your DirecTV or cable account, and it'll play right on your phone. Think about that. So if you log into your cable account or your DirecTV account, guess who's paying that bill?
Yeah.
Well, you're paying it to DirecTV in my case, right? I pay DirecTV. DirecTV pays ESPN because I just watched through the app. ESPN's not dead.
Yeah.
But what ESPN is incredibly savvy.
As the day is long.
They are incredibly savvy, and I'm telling you, and we can sit here and we can play this stupid little game and go back and forth about how you hate ESPN and Disney sucks. Hey, that's cool, dude. That doesn't mean they're dead.
Yeah.
That does not mean they're dead. All it means is that they like Bucked Up the same way that I like Bucked Up, which is why I have a buckshot right here, my friends. Got him back in. Love my guys at Bucked Up. Sent it right to my front door.
Yes.
2 cases of buckshot watermelon. Shake it up. Let's go. It is time to finish the day strong.
Let's go.
Fat ass has a golf lesson in 3.5 hours. Done.
Okay, first of all,
Yes.
fat ass has a golf lesson in what am I supposed to say to that?
Well, you should say I've lost weight. You're not.
Yeah,
I'm
you look
not
great.
fat.
You've lost weight. I mean, everything's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And I'm good looking. So I appreciate it. All right, let's get your comments. How the heck are you guys? Hello. Make sure if you're watching this show right now, please please click the like button. That would be amazing. We always love when you guys hit the like button. It does help the channel grow. So please feel free to do so. Right now we've had 1,200 views of the show, and we've only had 69 likes, so please hit that like button. Marlon Shaw gives us 10 gifts.
Let's go. Get the week started off strong, baby.
Way to go, my guy. Appreciate you, Marlon Shaw. Thank you. Travis Hinton says, let's go Casuals. What's up? Appreciate that. Thank you very much.